Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Our feelings are always hard to control. We are humans after all. Sometimes we do things we can't explain, just because we feel that way. I had a student named Daniel, a sweet and innocent child. I was prepared to do anything for him, but don't judge me just yet. First, let me tell you my story. My name is Jolene. I'm a 21-year-old math teacher at a primary school. I live with my sister and my mother. My house was next to the school where I work. I love teaching, and I like teaching the students in creative ways. They loved me, and I loved them. Daniel was a special student, though. Our story began at the start of the new year. It was the first day of school. I missed all my students over the summer break. I missed them so much that I stood by the door to welcome them back. Before I started my first lesson, Mr. Smith, the student affairs officer, knocked on the class door, with Daniel hiding behind his back. Mr. Smith greeted the class and asked them to greet Daniel, but Daniel was too shy and didn't move. So I went over to him to take him by the hand, but he pulled his hand away, which embarrassed Mr. Smith. I asked him to greet his classmates, so he went and he stood in front of the class and he said, "Hello, I am Daniel." Then he went and he sat at the very back of the class. He didn't talk much with the other kids. He didn't like to interact with anyone. Daniel always looked sad, and I thought to myself, he's only 8. What could possibly have made him that way? I tried to get close to him, but he resisted all my efforts. Sometimes he looked like he was hiding some big secret, and later on, I learned what it was. One night, when I was surfing the social media, I came across a horrible news story about a jealous husband killing his wife and another man right in front of his son. The child had been none other than my new student Daniel. Reading that sad story, I started understanding why Daniel was acting that way. I decided to try brightening his life a little. Every day, I would buy a small present and put it on his desk. At first, it had no effect, but slowly he came to love that. During break time, I would sit beside him and we would share food together. I would get him involved in class activities. On his birthday, I arranged a surprise party with his class, his grandmother, and myself. He was so happy that day. After the party, he hugged me and he told me that he loved me. I hugged him tightly. He was not just a student to me. I treated him like he was my own son. He told me that he wanted to call me mother, and that made me so happy. After his grandmother died, he came to live with me. We faced a lot of problems together, but I followed his success in life with pride. Daniel is all grown up now. He's graduating from the Faculty of Engineering. I am so proud of what he has made of himself. I confess that I love money and fame. People envy me for it, or they did. I've been a prima donna since the day I was born. All girls dreamt of being me. My father helped my brother and I achieve all our dreams. But there was one fly in the ointment, and this is my story. My name is Amelia. I'm 17 years old. My father's a businessman. My mother came from a rich family, so we were quite wealthy, rolling in dough, one might say. My brother Arthur was handsome, older than me. He went to flight school. We lived a good life without a care in the world. We had everything: cell phones, clothes, cars, servants, opportunities to travel the globe. We wanted for nothing. The most important thing was our happiness. And so my story starts at the villa where I lived with my family. My father employed many servants to attend to our every need. Martha was our head servant. She was in her 40s, funny, smart. Arthur and I loved her. Oddly, we didn't view her as a servant because she took such good care of us. Mother didn't seem to like her for some reason and was always mistreating her. Father, however, adored Martha. Once I left my iPod in the garden and I was going to get it. On my way to the garden, I passed by Father's office, so I decided to go and talk to him. He was at his desk, and Martha was standing next to him, crying. I figured it was because Mother had mistreated her again. Father saw me standing there and he asked me why I was still awake, and I told him about my iPod. I didn't think much of it at the time. As time passed, Mother and Martha's disputes became more frequent every day. Father wasn't home a lot, but whenever he came home, he would always ask about Martha first. One time, when this happened, I noticed that Mother glared at Father. I couldn't understand why. Father was often away traveling for long periods of time. One of those times, I noticed that Martha was always tired because Mother was making her work very hard. Mother never let her relax. One day, after midnight, I went to Martha's room to check on her, and I was shocked to see that she looked different than I remembered. I asked if she was pregnant, and she said that she was, but that I shouldn't tell anyone, otherwise she'd get fired. I didn't understand why my parents would fire her for being pregnant. A few days later, we received some really horrible news. Father's plane had crashed, and there were no survivors. We were stunned. All of us were crying, but Martha was crying especially hard. Suddenly, Martha fainted, and we took her to the hospital. Our life had changed overnight. After the funeral, Father's lawyer called us about Father's will. He came to our home and met my mother, Arthur, me, and Martha, and two other servants. The lawyer began reading the will. He started with Mother's inheritance, then mine, then Arthur's, and then Martha's. He looked at Martha, cleared his throat, and said in a quiet voice, "Martha, the deceased has left you 10 million to raise your child." The lawyer read the last line of Father's will, which said, "Martha's child is mine." We all gasped, but Mother suddenly lost it. Enraged, she attacked Martha as the lawyer pulled Mother away from her. Arthur was holding his head in his hands, and I was shocked. I said to Martha, "How dare you? How dare you do this to us? This is our money. You don't deserve any of it." Then I spoke to the lawyer. "Please tell me this isn't true." He replied helplessly, "Unfortunately, it is." Arthur was glaring at Martha, and he said coldly, "Martha, you are going to die." Martha looked very frightened upon hearing this. That night, the other servants helped Martha sneak out of the house. Arthur came to my room that same night and told me that we had to kill Martha. He said he knew where she was, and that her 10 million belonged to us. At first, I was hesitant to get involved. I mean, that was murder, but in the end, I reluctantly agreed to help him. The next day we made a call and hired a hitman to rid us of that disaster. Later we received a call from him. He said that Martha was no longer a problem. We smirked in victory. A few days later, the lawyer came by again. Before he could tell us why he came, we beheld a miracle. Our recently said to be deceased father was walking behind him with a servant holding a child. Arthur and I stared at him in disbelief and shock. Then we looked at each other. Arthur's face had gone pale white as all the blood drained from his face. Father was livid and said to us in an accusing manner, "The moment you thought I was dead and that I left an inheritance for Martha, you immediately arranged to have her killed. I suspected you'd try something like this. It was pure luck that I got back when I did. I missed my flight that day, otherwise I would have been dead now. So fortunately I came back early enough for Martha to call me and tell me about your death threat. When I arrived at Martha's place, she was already dead, but I called 911, and they were able to save the child. Then I immediately called my lawyer to revise my will, to leave half of my inheritance to this child. I felt like I was in an endless nightmare. The police arrived and told us that the hired killer had been arrested and had confessed, and told the police that Arthur and I were the ones who hired him to kill Martha. As the policeman was handcuffing us to take us away, I thought about the irony, how Martha was dead, how her newborn baby had survived and was now the richest child in the country, how Arthur and I were going to jail, and how one small fly in the ointment had caused our ultimate fall from grace. I have been cursed, and it will haunt me for the rest of my life. It all began with a joke at first, but some jokes have serious consequences, and when this happens, your life becomes an uphill struggle. My name is Catherine. I'm 16 years old, and I live with my parents and my little sister Mara. I like music, acting, and watching action movies. I play baseball and practice ballet. I've even won a lot of prizes. I just had one problem. I like to make fun of people. It's like an addiction. I never watched what I said, nor did I care who it hurt. The kids I picked on were actually kind and gentle, but that just encouraged me even more. My friends were exactly like me. In fact, I was their leader. We walked like we owned the school. We had a classmate named Norman. He wasn't exactly what you'd call in good shape. He was quite the opposite of fit. During class breaks, my gang and I would steal his lunchbox and throw it around each other, keeping it away from him. We watched him run trying to catch us, but he'd stop halfway. The extra weight didn't help him, and he'd quickly run out of breath. Whenever he entered the classroom, we would surprise him by throwing old, musty vegetables and fruits at him. Norman tolerated our teasing. He didn't seem to mind much. But then, one day, a joke went a bit too far. We conceived an evil plan. We told him that there was going to be a photo contest, and the person who makes the funniest pose wins. Norman was so gullible that he believed us. He actually gave it some thought. Then he posed for us. We did our best not to burst out laughing while we took pictures for him. The next day, when he came to school, Norman discovered that his photo shoot pictures had been posted all over the classroom walls, and the kids were laughing, writing comments all over the place. Norman was mortified, and he looked around at his classmates' faces. They were all laughing and pointing at him. Norman started crying, and his nose started bleeding. Then he fainted. A teacher had to call an ambulance to take him to the hospital. I certainly didn't expect that to happen. We knew that Norman would get so fatigued sometimes and leave school for the rest of the day, but we didn't know that he had a medical condition, and I felt deep regret. The curse that I spoke of earlier began when a girl named Naomi joined our class as a new student. On her first day, our teacher brought her in and introduced her to us. She sat at the desk at the very last row. I noticed that she was always looking at me in a strange way, and I wondered why. She looked at me with disdain, and I couldn't figure out why. It was my first time meeting her, after all. I avoided her, mainly because her looks made me feel uneasy, and whenever my gang wanted to make fun of her, I told them to leave her alone. I felt there was something about this girl. One day, during science class, the teacher had paired us up to do a lab experiment, and I intended to ask her about the way she looked at me. But before I could say anything, she took the initiative and surprised me by broaching the subject herself. "You will pay for what you did to Norman," she said coldly. I looked at her and asked, "How do you know Norman? And what are you talking about?" She replied, "It doesn't matter how I know. I just do." I spent the next few days thinking about her words. Afterwards, Naomi ignored me completely. No more staring, no more accusing looks. It was as if I no longer existed to her. I didn't understand her. Then came the day. We had a basketball match. It was the championship game, but I was still busy thinking about Naomi's words. During the game, I glanced at Naomi and caught her looking at me, which distracted me. One of the players from the other team suddenly bumped into me, knocking me down and causing me to land badly on one of my knees. The pain I was in. I had to withdraw from the game to be taken to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor said that I had torn a ligament from my knee and told me that I would need a surgery and a lot of medication. So after going through the surgery, I began taking my medications. It caused me to gain weight, even though I wasn't eating very much, just vegetables and fruits. I asked the doctor about my sudden weight gain, and he told me the medications I was taking were affecting my hormonal balance, which rarely happened, but in my case, it did. He said that I would either have to endure great pain or deal with the overweight because it wasn't going to stop. So there you have it, guys. This is the curse that Naomi cast upon me, the price I had to pay for what I did to Norman. Eventually, I got well enough to take my final exams. When I arrived at school, all my friends took one look at me and started laughing. I was now their target, their prey. One of them said, "You're as large as an elephant." "I'll lose weight once I stop taking my medications," I retorted, but no one was listening. I am now living in a nightmare, and I would like to tell Norman that I'm very, very sorry for everything that I've done. We lived with a monster who knew no mercy. He would hit and insult us all the time. I wished him dead on a daily basis. He would kick me out of the house often. But as we all know, there comes a turning point in everyone's life that either ends in success or tragedy. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Lara. I am the middle sister among 4 siblings. We lived with a cruel father, whose bad behavior had long erased any kind memories we may have once had for him. Our mother was kind, lovely, and responsible. She used to take care of us in every way, but she finally had to abandon us because she just couldn't take any more of father's abuse. I remember the scene vividly to this very day. There was a big fight between my parents. At the end of it, Mother had opened the door while holding a suitcase. We were too young to understand anything at the time. She was crying as she turned and walked out of our lives forever. We were expecting father's attitude to change after that, but it didn't. He continued mistreating and ridiculing us every opportunity he got, neglecting us completely. He gave us neither food nor clothes, only a very small amount of money to fend for ourselves. What could we do? We had to live with the situation. He would often return home drunk at midnight. Scared, we'd stay quiet in our rooms. The only bright spot in our lives was our dear brother Philip. He was father's favorite son, which caused us to depend on Philip to get anything we need, like money or other necessities. Philip was so funny. He could make us and even father laugh. He had a way with father and could usually manipulate him to protect us a little. We all loved Philip. He was the only sunshine in our miserable, gloomy existence. One day, we woke up in the middle of a stormy weather. We turned on the TV and listened to the news. It said the bad weather had spawned a huge tornado. It was heading our way. They advised people to stay inside. We all looked at each other, knowing full well that our old worn-out roof could not withstand the tornado. Philip said he needed to talk to father. After he knocked and entered father's room, we heard father shouting at Philip. Philip had a look of fear on his face. Father then shouted, "If anyone wants to fix anything at home, then he is welcome to, but I will not fix anything." Philip gasped and said, "But Dad, it's a big tornado." Father then grabbed Philip by the collar and pulled him up close, saying, "Then you go fix it." Philip was so afraid he couldn't swallow. Father dragged Philip to the backyard. He brought nails, wood, a hammer, and a long ladder. Philip was terrified when father pushed these things at him and told him to get to work. Philip begged, "Please, Dad," but father just shouted, "Go." Philip took the nails, the hammer, and the wood and began to climb the ladder up to the roof. The wind was howling, blowing very hard, and I had a feeling of dread that something terrible was about to happen. Father just stood there, not worried about Philip's safety at all. To calm us down, Philip looked at us, as if to say, "Don't worry, everyone. I'll be okay." There were many wires on the roof. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind caused Philip to lose his balance, and he reached out to grab onto something to keep from falling. Unfortunately, he got hold of an uninsulated wire. He screamed at once and fell off the roof. We watched, horrified, and began screaming. Father frantically rushed over to Philip's body lying on the ground. He lifted Philip's head into his arms and rocked him gently, but Philip was dead. He got electrocuted. We had never seen Father cry, but he cried a lot that day. At Philip's funeral, we all stood and looked at the photo, showing Philip smiling like an angel. Father hugged us as a group and said, "Please forgive me, kids. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I loved you all so much. I'm so sorry for not being a good father." We believed him. We hugged him back. He was being sincere with us for once. From that point on, he was a changed man. He gave us everything. Love, attention, money. Now we love our home and our lives. I can finally say truthfully, with all my heart, I love you, Daddy. He was a dream. The future. Or so I thought. But my love was cursed right from the start. Sounds a bit confusing, right? Let me explain. But first, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Carolyn. I was a dreamer. I dreamed of a good, warm, stable, successful life. I wanted a good job. And I wanted to travel around the world a bit with Helen. She was my best friend. We virtually shared the same dreams and hobbies and interests and lifestyles. We've been friends since we were kids. People often thought that we were sisters. I did too, in fact. She even got jealous if anyone tried to get close to me. Every day, Helen and I worked a little more towards our dreams. Once, when Helen and I were traveling with some of our friends, we had a problem with the hostess on the plane. A gentleman intervened and cleverly solved our problems. His name was Danny. I liked him. A lot. I thought about him often. But whenever I talked to Helen about him, she told me that he was not as amazing as I seemed to think he was. Coincidentally, I met him again at a party of a mutual friend. We talked together till daylight. I told Helen about our encounter, and she expressed her wishes that my love story would have a happy ending. I similarly told her that I hoped she would find the love of her life someday too. Everything would be okay, we figured. Then, one day, I received a letter in our mailbox. It was in weird handwriting, as if the writer had written it with a trembling hand. I opened it curiously. It said that my love for Danny would become a curse if I didn't give him up and get him out of my life. What nonsense, I thought. Whose idea of a silly joke was this? I immediately called Danny and Helen to tell them about the letter. Danny laughed, but Helen was worried and suggested that I should be careful from now on. That same day, Danny had a horrible car accident, but fortunately he wasn't hurt. A detective investigating the case determined that his car brakes had been tampered with. In another incident, a car almost hit me, but it swerved away at the last minute. When I mentioned this incident to Danny, he tried to calm me down and told me to just forget about it. He gave me a beautiful bracelet as a present and proposed. We got engaged, and I couldn't have been happier. I wanted to show the bracelet to Helen, but somehow I seemed to have lost it. I couldn't find it anywhere. Anyway, when I told Helen about his proposal, she was thrilled for me. I spent days shopping for just the right wedding dress. I was so busy with preparations that I forgot all about the ominous letter. I went to the wedding hall early to make sure that everything was ready and prepared. Helen was helping me, and Danny kept calling me to make sure I was all right. Suddenly, the lights went out. I called out to Helen, worried that she might have tripped and fallen when the lights were out. When the lights came back on, Helen had fainted, and my dress had disappeared. I screamed to the ceiling, "What do you want from me? Leave me alone!" Suddenly, Danny appeared out of nowhere and asked me what had happened. I told him then and there that we must break off our engagement, otherwise the curse the letter mentioned might injure someone or cause someone to die. Then Helen came too and tried to calm me down. She told me to go to the car and that she would get our stuff and follow me. I loved Danny and wanted to marry him, but now I was seriously worried that this curse threat might actually be real. Helen came back carrying a bag and a large suitcase and told Danny not to worry, that she would drive me home and then call him to tell him that we had arrived safely. I was still crying, and Helen was trying to calm me down. When we arrived home, I noticed something strange. Helen was carrying a bag that was partially open, and I glimpsed a piece of clothing stuffed into it. It looked exactly like my dress. I opened the bag and found that it was my dress. I confronted Helen and demanded to know how my missing dress ended up in her bag. I clearly caught her red-handed, and she was unable to answer coherently. I realized at that moment that the source of the so-called curse was Helen. "Helen," I said, "how dare you do this to me? I thought we were like sisters to each other." She replied icily, with a glare that I saw for the first time. She said that she fell in love with Danny just as I did, but he chose me instead of her, and that she hated me for it. She said she won him over and got him to love her instead. Then they both tried to scare me into calling off the wedding so that she and Danny could be together. There are no words to describe how I felt at the time. I replied in a similar tone. I told her that I don't ever want to see her again, or Danny. Neither of them mattered anymore. I never did see Helen or Danny after that day. I'm on a Caribbean island now, sipping on a cocktail. I read in the paper that Danny and Helen had announced their engagement. I'm thinking about what wedding present I should give them as a surprise.
Hey, my name is Anne. It was the summer break before college, and as a graduation kind of celebration and before each and everyone went to a different college, my best friends and I decided to go on a fancy summer vacation to one of the most beautiful places on earth. At least that's what I think, to Hawaii. I was in my room daydreaming about wearing those cool coconut bras while enjoying an exotic juice, maybe even doing a hula dance, and then my best friend Kim called and burst my coconut bubble. She suggested that since we're off to a whole new stage of our lives, we may as well get a complete makeover. I thought she meant we should go shopping or something, but no, she said we should go to the hair salon and get new haircuts and maybe even dye our hair. I admit that I was overly excited about the whole thing, so I said yes. My normal hairdresser was on annual leave. She has always cut my hair exactly how I describe it. I love her. However, she has been gone for a while, and we couldn't wait any longer for a haircut, so I made an appointment with another hairdresser at the same salon. On a side note, Kim is blonde, while I'm a brunette. I know this info might not sound useful, but it will come in handy throughout the story. Kim and I drove to the hair salon. The place looked extra fancy, the kind of place you would trust. We went inside all giggly like we were 12. We were actually 18 at the time. Anyways, we were greeted by a really nice lady. That lady said that Kim should get highlights and I should go for the same, plus going blonde. I was skeptic, but who cares? It's summertime. The lady put bleach all over my head and went to do Kim's hair. So, after 15 minutes, my scalp started burning like crazy. So I called the nice lady and she said it was time to wash the bleach. As she was washing my head, her smiley face went poker. Chunks of my now orange hair were all over the sink. Kim looked at me and her eyes got as big as my head. The lady asked me not to freak out and that she could cover the bald spots with a really short haircut. The lady asked me not to freak out and that she could cover the bald spots, and so she started cutting my hair. So far, so good. Then she snips a huge section out of the front of my hair saying that she was framing my face. At this point, it was too late to say anything. The haircut was just hideous. Not me at all, and especially not what I asked for. So I told her that I hated it. She felt really bad and I started to tear up because it was seriously so ugly. And now that I was stuck with a really bad haircut, I tried to calm myself that maybe the color will turn out okay. And then she put the dye on my hair and it turned my hair green. The only solution now was to become a redhead. And that was just a no for me. I don't have the complexion of a redhead. Our boyfriends were actually going to pick us up from the salon, and just imagining the look on Nick's face made me cry and laugh at the same time. Rachel played it really cool, and even her highlights did not go so well. But that incident was just one of a kind. I ended up with the weirdest hair color ever. It was like I was half mermaid, half dragon. This did not stop us from enjoying our summer break though. It was actually a good source of jokes for a long, long time.
One of the best feelings in the world for any woman is being a mother. To have someone love you for who you are, for just being you, and expect nothing in return. You're the heroine of their story. You become everything they ever dreamed, and you'd give anything to see a smile on their face. I'm proud to say that I'm a mother to 50 kids. I know that's a lot, but let me tell you the story. I'm Susan, 20 years old. I come from a very rich family. My dad's Stefan Heiss, a very famous businessman. Yes, the owner of Heiss Cars Industry. My mom's Elena. She comes from a very rich family in Sweden. She married my dad and they built their life from scratch. I loved kids, ever since I was a kid. Sometimes I feel like they're walking cotton candy. Their laughs, their mischief. All the kids in our family loved me, and I loved them. Even my aunt said that I'd make a great mother someday. So did Henry. Henry was my childhood friend. We grew up together. We had the same interests, same hobbies. We even thought alike. We got married and started our life together. We were young, but our dreams were big. I was thrilled when I found out that I was pregnant, and Henry was so happy he couldn't believe it. He did everything he could to help me relax. He couldn't wait to be a father, but destiny had something else in store for us. We had just arrived from Sweden. Henry had a problem at work. He was talking on the phone while driving at high speed on a dangerous road. I tried to tell him to watch the road, but it was too late. A truck came out of nowhere and pushed our car off the side. We fell into the lake, and we were unconscious. When I woke up, I found my mother and Henry's mother both looking at me, trying their best not to cry, and I soon found out why. In order to save my life, they put me through an operation. Not only have I lost my child, but I won't be able to have one ever again. Henry was also bruised, but my wounds ran way deeper. That was it, and I could never forgive him. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened, I thought. None of it. I got a divorce later, after Henry tried over and over and over to fix the situation, to apologize, to ask for a second chance, but all I saw were empty words. There was no second chance. I tried to keep myself busy, find a way to invest my money and time, trying to get my mind off the accident. I decided to open up a toy store. I wanted to bring joy to all the children. One day, as I was standing in my store, I glimpsed a small boy standing out front, looking at a toy. The boy was alone, about 8 years old, but that wasn't all. His clothes were patched up and looked more like rags. His face and hands were dirty, and he just stood there, looking at the doll, daydreaming. I found myself walking out to him, but when he saw me coming, he ran away. A few days passed, and that boy's gaze was all I thought of. Then, one day, I found him outside the store again, looking at a different toy. I moved towards him slowly this time, till I was right beside him. Then I said, "Do you like it?" The boy freaked out and tried to run again, but I caught his arm this time and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm Susan." The boy looked at me, terrified, and I smiled. He started to relax. He told me his name was Billy, and that he was 7, and that he lives nearby. When I asked him about his parents, he said he never knew them, that he lived with Uncle Max. I asked him who Uncle Max was, but he cast his eyes down and was nervous all of a sudden. He looked a bit scared. I got curious, so I took him home with me, let him shower, and prepared a hot meal. I told him that I'd take him home after he'd eaten. I asked him about where he lived. He was quiet for a second. Then he said he had to go, that his brothers and sisters were waiting for him. I asked him how many he had. "Around 50, he said. I was shocked. He told me that they all lived in a big room with Uncle Max. "But how is this Uncle Max able to look after you all?" I asked curiously. But he got nervous again, and he insisted that he must leave, so I decided to take him there. Maybe it'll help clear some of the mystery, I thought. I drove, and Billy was guiding the way, until we got there. The place was a bit far from all the other houses. It looked more like a dump, with some sort of shack built on it. A man was standing in front of the door, holding a kid by the arm and beating him senseless. The boy was younger than Billy, and Billy was shaking next to me, mumbling to himself, "He's gonna hit me too. I'm so late." Then he turned to me and said, "Bye, Susan. You have to leave now, quickly." And then he ran towards the shack. I backed up the car and stood nearby to see what happens. The man hit him hard across the face, and I heard him say, "Where's the money you stole today, boy?" Billy turned out his empty pockets, and the man dragged him inside by the collar. I wanted to help, so I decided to call Henry, who was more than happy to answer my call. I told him what had happened, and he came to me. We approached the shack together slowly and looked through the window. A lot of children, ages from 3 to 7. The place was a real dump. The man was sitting at a table. It had food and drink. Billy was dragging a heavy sack on the floor, and another kid was carrying a cup to bring to the man, who snatched it out of the boy's hand. Then he got up and started waking the rest of the kids, telling them to get out there and bring him money, that they would face a real nightmare if they didn't. I wanted to barge in, but Henry stopped me. He called the police instead. The police came quickly, and they caught the man. Apparently, he kidnapped these children from parks and surrounding areas, so they could steal for him, and he would starve them and beat them. The police didn't know what to do with all the children, and I felt like this was my second chance. I told the police that I would build a home big enough, and I would take them all in, to give them the care and love that they deserve. And that is how I became a mother to 50 kids. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to have your life completely destroyed by someone close to you? Ever thought about what you would do then? I didn't have time to think, 'cause that's exactly what happened to me. It all started 2 years ago. I lived a quiet life with my mom and dad and my sister. I loved my family. We were always together. We were happy until that fateful day. My dad got fired from his work, a big company. He had worked there for 20 years. The only money we had then was what he had managed to save over the years. Finding a new job wasn't easy. It was a hard time for all of us, especially my dad. He was becoming desperate. At times, he just sat there, quietly, deep in thought, and I rarely saw him smile since. One late night, we were still up waiting for him when he walked through the door. But something was different. He wasn't walking straight. It was the first time in my life seeing him drunk. I decided to take matters in my own hand. I started job hunting. I was lucky enough to find something suitable at a startup company. The pay was good enough, and the more I worked, the more I earned. I was trying my best to get our life back. I was giving it all I've got. My dad started asking me for money. I was more than happy to give him what he needed. I didn't even ask what it was for. Then he started asking for more. He came late almost every night, and he was never awake in the morning. It seemed like we hadn't talked together for ages. Then, money started disappearing from my purse. I got home from work one night. It had been a long day, and I was really tired. I put my bag in my room, and I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. I made myself a sandwich, then took it back to my room. But when I got to the door, I saw a shadow moving inside. I thought everyone was asleep, so I opened the door slightly and looked inside. I couldn't believe what I saw. My dad was standing over my bag, and my wallet was in his hand. He found no money in it, so he threw it on the bed and started going through my purse. At that moment, my mom came down the stairs. She had my dad's shirt in her hands and a small pack of white powder. I looked at her face. Her eyes were filled with tears. I tried to speak, but found nothing to say. My dad came out of my room. He saw us standing there. He tore the shirt and the pack from my mom's hands. He was hysterical. He started breaking things around him. Suddenly, everything changed. My mom and I were too scared to move. But then my sister came running down the stairs. He pulled her towards him and held a knife to her throat. He threatened to kill her if we didn't give him money. Without a moment's thought, I did what he asked. Things only got worse. Nothing was ever enough. He asked for more and more money, and if I refused, he'd get violent, beating up anyone in his path. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I would just give him what he wanted, until I decided enough was enough. He barged down the stairs one evening and asked for all the money I've got. I told him we had expenses to pay, the rent, school fees, but none of it mattered to him. He asked me again for the money and threatened me if I didn't do what he asked. I refused. He hit me so hard that I crashed my head against the wall and fell to the floor, bleeding. Everything went dark. My mom took me to different hospitals, and I had to do a lot of checkups and tests, but all the doctors said the same thing, that this was it. I was sentenced to live my life in darkness, never to see the light again. Bumping my head against the wall was one of the reasons, but apparently my psychological state played a huge role in my recovery. The doctors suggested that I'd be taken to a psychiatrist. My dad felt sorry for what he had done to me. He quit the drugs and alcohol, tried to be proper, but it was because of him that I was in this state. I didn't know if I could ever find it in myself to forgive him. I was torn inside. He was my dad, but I couldn't forget what had happened. I stopped talking shortly after, and he left, disappearing from our lives. No one knew where he was or what he was. A year had passed, and he came home. He sounded good, kind of like how he was before. He's trying to make up for what he had done. But to me, nothing he does makes a difference anymore. Kind of like how he was before. He's trying to make up for what he had done. But to me, nothing he does makes a difference anymore. I'm still in the dark. That's something I'm gonna have to live with my whole life. I can't change that. What do you think I should do?
I adore my family. I adore our get-togethers, our joking around, our meals, everything. I can't imagine my life without them. But one day, I almost killed them all. No, I'm not insane, I assure you, so don't worry. I'll tell you what happened. My name is Ginger. I'm 18 years old. As you can see, I'm wearing an apron. This is because I love to cook. I like all things kitchen-related. My happiest moments are when I see my family eating a meal together. I always cook for them. They enjoy it too, and they support me. They let me try different dishes from different countries. I like to listen to their opinions about my cooking skills. I'm also addicted to cooking programs. One day, my cousin Charlotte came to visit before Thanksgiving Day. She likes to dress all in black, and today was no exception. For some reason, she had called me earlier and asked me if I had ever heard of Thanksgiving Day curse. I said no, of course, so she told me that the curse applied to large families who ate a big meal together on Thanksgiving. The curse was the result of an evil spirit named Vicky, who would possess the cook's body in some family's household and poison the whole family. She said that Vicky used to be a housewife who was a great cook and who loved her family, and yet she poisoned them all during Thanksgiving meal.
She watched them die one by one, and then she killed herself as the grand finale. At first, I thought Charlotte was joking and trying to scare me, and I told her that it was nonsense, just an old wives' tale. But she said that every legend was usually based on facts. I paused for a second. That was partly true. I went to my room and searched the internet and found the same information about the curse that she had relayed to me, which frightened me even more. Vicky was just like me, or was it the opposite? I stopped myself from getting deeper into this. I needed to focus on preparing the meal. On Thanksgiving's Day, my father bought some groceries, which included a white bottle of liquid. I presumed it to be milk, though it smelled a little weird. But I thought it was my imagination. My aunt called and said she would be arriving a few minutes later, so I had to hurry and finish the meal quickly. My finishing touch was dessert. It was going to be pumpkin candy. I prepared it using the milk that Dad bought. After everyone had arrived, I served dinner. We all sat down and prayed before the meal. Then, everyone started eating. Things were going well. Everyone was chatting merrily and complimenting me on the food. I was overjoyed. But somehow, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. I looked at Charlotte, but she smiled supportively. Suddenly, one by one, the people around the table started clutching their stomachs and groaning in pain. The last thing I remember before I lost consciousness was my brother calling the ambulance. When I woke up later, I was lying in a hospital bed, alongside all my family members, who were also lying in the hospital bed. The doctor came in and reported happily that we would all be fine. Then he looked at me and winked. He also said, "Next time, young lady, I suggest not using white paint in your cooking." And that was how I almost killed my loving family.
This is Tina, and this is a story about me and my biological mother. My mother is sitting in the cafe of a garden center, staring at her cup of tea. I'm over the other side of the shop looking at some strawberry preserves. I want to attract her attention, but the word mom sticks in my throat. I use it so infrequently. Instead of calling out, I just walk over and show her the jam. Ever since I left home 15 years ago, the relationship between my mother and me has worsened. In hindsight, it was never very good to start with, but it's taken 15 years of counseling and soul searching to realize that. The fact of it is that my mother and I don't like each other much. We don't hate each other, we're just sort of indifferent. There, I've said it, indifferent. Saying it feels like committing some sort of crime. My mother and I live hundreds of miles apart, and in the case of most of my friends, this should mean that visiting home should be a time of joy and excitement. Instead, they are weekends of tense, polite conversation, both of us desperately searching for something in common to talk about. And that is usually what she's currently watching on television. As a 20-something woman, I'm constantly surrounded by reminders that my mom should be my best friend. Advertising aimed at my demographic features glamorous, youthful mothers going to the salons with their best friend daughters. Because it's all so alien to me, I tend to become a little bit fixated. I tend to look beyond the principal plot lines of films and become obsessed with the parts that involve a mother and a daughter for a large, loving family headed by a quirky matriarch. When the film Mamma Mia came out, I went to see it with a girlfriend for a bit of a laugh. It was mainly about love affairs between Meryl Streep and her exes. As I watched, I was as always bewildered by the apparently natural bond that mothers and daughters have on screen. Another film. It's complicated, again with Meryl Streep, has a plot that hinges on her post-divorce relationship with her ex-husband. But the highlights for me? The way her children clustered around her and the way she reacted when they all came back to visit. Though I know it's not just on screen. My friend Susie has the same exact sort of relationship with her mom. It baffles and fascinates me. They talk every single day, sometimes more often, and tell each other everything. I didn't have an unhappy upbringing. I wasn't a happy child, but that wasn't down to child abuse or neglect. I was well clothed, fed, and I even had ballet lessons. I went to university paid for by my parents, and I knew, and I still know, that there's always somewhere to stay if I need to. But my mother and I never had the sort of closeness I saw in my friends' relationships. They would go shopping or share secrets. They would tell their moms things about their lives. The one time I tried to ask my mother about her teenage years, she told me to mind my own business. And so I did. I grew up minding my own business and she minded hers. I left home as soon as possible and met my now husband at university, and he quickly stepped into the role of best friend and emotional support giver. I made enduring friendships, most of which I believe to be unconditional. Most of my friends believe me to be a loving and caring individual, and I know I could turn to any one of them in an emergency, and them to me. Yet I cannot remember the last time my mother and I hugged, even though I hug my friends all the time, and the very thought of it makes me cringe. My mother is the last person I go to in a crisis. She is certainly the last person to whom I would tell a secret or a problem. And if I'm honest, I don't need to anymore, as I have my own friends now. But my lack of a close friendship with her bothers other people a lot. When I say that I don't have a close relationship with her, they ask whether we fight a lot. But no, I don't recall ever having a fight with my mother. That would entail caring enough to bother. I used to go through phases of worrying about it and trying to repair the damage, but all the while I was aware that I was doing it for other people. I visit infrequently, but I visit. I do it not so I can see her, but if I'm honest, so her neighbors and family can see me visiting. A few years ago, before I realized I didn't care anymore, I called her up and asked whether we could sort it out. Her answer told me everything I needed to know. Sort what out? I stopped bothering from that moment on. Now my principal concern is explaining to people why I don't see her that often. And I feel guilty for not really having a good enough reason. My parents weren't divorced. My father died a few years ago. There has been no huge family dispute. There's no big skeleton in anyone's cupboard. Well, not mine anyway. I recently went to see a nurse for a routine appointment, and she asked a host of questions about my mother. Eventually, I had to confess that I didn't know half the answers. She asked whether I could find out. My heart sank as I imagined having to give away a detail of my life, such as why I was going to the nurse, to my own mother. Mother's Day is a nightmare. Trying to find a card that doesn't say my mother is my best friend or the best mother in the world or my heroine is not easy, let me tell you. Others try to fix it for me. Why don't you book a spa weekend for your mom? The very thought of my mother agreeing to or enjoying something like that is just laughable. Or they ask, why don't you go for counseling? This would be all well and good if she would ever condone the idea, but it implies a relationship that needs to be mended. Why does it need to be fixed at all? Were my mother a woman I had met on a train and chatted to for half an hour, she would be one of the last people in the world I would want to talk to for a further half hour. If she wasn't my mother, she would be someone I groaned about having to spend any time with. I simply grew up and discovered that I didn't like my mother as a human being. She's not like me. She's self-obsessed, not interested in others, thoughtless, and incapable of genuine warmth. She has no concept of giving love to receive love, and has never asked me a single meaningful question about my life or career. Some people might feel that I have a duty as a daughter to be there for my mother, that it's down to me to repair our relationship. But because of the way she's raised me, I don't feel there is a relationship to repair. I wish my mother no harm, and if she were in trouble, I would help her like a shot. But I would also be there for any of my neighbors and the old man who swears at people from the bus stop across the road.
My name is Ginny. You can call me Bad Girl if you like. That's what the neighborhood kids called me. I have a long story to tell you. I was the eldest of 5 siblings. My mother died of illness, and my father was crippled in a car accident. He couldn't walk, and he had to use a wheelchair. Seeing my siblings suffer from hunger and poverty was a constant sight at home. My father was depressed. Our neighbors helped us a lot, but I was constantly worried what would happen if they ever stopped, so I decided to try and find a job. I knew it wouldn't be easy because I was only 15. Who'd want to hire a 15-year-old? Though I was apprehensive and lacking confidence, I made up my mind to get a job. I went to many places: clothing shops, flower shops, grocery stores. The answer was the same: we're not hiring at the moment. One day, feeling down, I was walking aimlessly with no destination in mind, when suddenly I found myself near a hospital. On an impulse, I entered. I saw a nurse, but she seemed too gloomy to talk, so I looked around and found another nurse who looked a bit kinder. She noticed me and asked if I needed any help. I told her that I was looking for a job. Any job. I'd even mop and clean. She felt sympathy for me and told me not to worry. Then she went into the manager's office. I was worried. Was I in trouble? A minute later, she called me in to meet the manager. He seemed very kind, and he quietly asked for my name. I told him it was Ginny. He told me that Martha, the kind nurse who was helping me, told him that I was looking for any job available. He said he had a job for me, but he was concerned that it might be a problem. I felt a pang of fear and asked what the problem was. He said that I would have to work night shifts. That was it? I felt so relieved. I immediately agreed, and he said that he liked my enthusiasm and that I could start tomorrow. I was so happy. I returned home quickly, hugged my siblings, and kissed my father's hands. I told them everything about my new job. My father looked at me sadly and said that I was too young to have to bear this responsibility. I told him that it was okay and that I could deal with it. When I went to work at the hospital every night, there was a gang of young kids who were always loitering around the neighborhood. I hoped they wouldn't bother me, but my hopes were in vain. They made fun of me every time I passed them. I never told my family about this, though. I began work as a cleaning lady, but due to my diligence and intelligence, I was able to learn a little bit about nursing. So, I was able to get promoted, first to nursing assistant, then to a nurse. My colleagues supported me a lot. Everything was almost perfect, except for the neighborhood gang that was always bothering me and calling me Ginny the bad girl. I wished they would just go away and leave me alone. Then, one day, a miracle happened. While I was working at the hospital, the neighborhood bullies came in, carrying their leader. He was badly injured. His whole body was covered in blood. They were shouting for someone to help them, and when they saw me, they pleaded with me to save him. I worked quickly with the other staff. His condition was serious. He had been in a terrible motorcycle accident. The staff and I worked feverishly to stabilize his condition and treat him. After stabilizing him, I was exhausted. Suddenly, I felt someone coming close. It was the gang. They apologized for making fun of me and asked me to forgive them. They said they didn't know that I worked at a hospital. I smiled and told them it was okay, and that I considered them to be my brothers and sisters. Another nurse went to them and told them that their friend was okay now. I was so happy that my problem was solved. They called me over to talk to their leader. He had tears in his eyes and told me that he was so sorry and asked me to forgive him. He was so sincere that I was moved. I gently asked him to be quiet and get some rest. As I was walking away, he called me and thanked me again. After that incident, the manager called me in and praised me for saving the patient's life that day. I was still a long way from achieving my dreams, but I had a good head start, and the neighborhood gang began calling me the Mercy Angel. I don't believe in ghosts, evil spirits, haunted houses, metaphysics, etc. I only believe in science and facts. But sometimes things happen that shred all your beliefs. I want to introduce myself. I'm Lisa. I'm 14 years old. I live with my mom, dad, and grandmother, and they're all very proud of me. I'm the leader of the science club at school, and I've been the perfect student for the past 2 years. My hobbies are reading, watching educational videos, and learning. I like to discuss matters with rational people, not those who believe in myths, aliens, ghosts, and other such nonsense. I personally think these people have mental issues. One morning, my grandmother passed away. I was sad for a long time because I missed her so much. On the day of her funeral, the whole city must have come to say goodbye. While the priests were praying, I noticed something peculiar about one of the graves in the graveyard. After the prayer ended, I approached the grave in question to investigate. There was some weird writing on it. Then, a wispy, transparent, smoky figure appeared out of nowhere. It said to me, "Do not get closer to Donna Median's grave. Beware." I shivered slightly and asked the apparition who Donna was, and it replied. Who was she? She was an evil witch who liked to scare people. She was burned at the stake as a witch, but before her death she swore a curse that if anyone ever approached her grave, her ghost would haunt that person to the day they die. I did not laugh at the apparition's warning. Instead, I turned and returned home, thinking about what had happened. On a sudden defiant impulse, I decided to visit that grave that night to see for myself if the curse was real. I took my dad's flashlight and wore a raincoat. It was pitch black outside. The place was horribly unsettling at night, but I wasn't worried at all. It's not like it was real, right? I entered the gate to the sound of howling dogs and meowing cats. My blood ran cold, and a sudden chill ran through me. I turned on the flashlight and began searching for the grave. My hands were trembling so badly I dropped the flashlight several times. Sometimes I would step on something crunchy, and I would shine the light downward, only to see that I had stepped on an insect. Sometimes I'd see a cat here and there. Then suddenly, I heard an eerie sound close by. I froze, not daring to move. Slowly, I pointed my light towards the sound, and gasped as my light illuminated a dark, shadowy figure. It was about my height, and dressed all in black. I spun around and fled as rapidly as my faithful feet could carry me. I dove into bed, but I didn't sleep at all that night. I even left the lights on. The next day, when I woke up, I asked my dad if graveyards had ghosts, and he wondered why I would ask such a question. I was embarrassed and laughed to hide my fear. I told him that I was just curious. That was all. Dad looked at me suspiciously, but continued. I've heard stories, he said, that some people have seen a ghost of a girl from time to time beside Donna Median's grave. I felt my heart sink, and I asked slowly, "Is she about my height and dressed in black?" He replied, "Yes, that's how I've heard the ghost described." "How in the world did you know that?" I looked down casually and answered, "Oh, I read an article about it on the internet last night." My head hurt just thinking about this ghost thing. I made up my mind to prove or disprove it once and for all. I called my friend Laura and persuaded her to come with me to the grave. The following night, we met at the stroke of midnight at the entrance to the graveyard. Laura was shaking and constantly casting glances right and left. The weather was rainy and gloomy. The ground was muddy, and cats were meowing everywhere. It would have made the perfect setting for a supernatural horror movie. While we were looking for Donna's grave, flying bats would occasionally startle Laura, causing her to scream alarmed. As we approached Donna's grave, we suddenly heard a sound behind us. We both turned around at the same time and screamed. A ghost was glaring at us. It asked angrily, "What are you doing beside my grandmother's grave?" "Wait a minute. Are you girls?" She uncovered her face, revealing that she was just a girl, and a beautiful one at that. She told us that her name was Carmen, and asked me to turn off the flashlight, 'cause it hurt her eyes. I did. Then I asked, "Who are you?" She replied, "I'm the 5th grandchild of Donna Median, the poor woman in this grave, who has been wrongly accused." We both whispered back, "Wrongly accused?" She continued saying, "Yes, she was a victim of the Holocaust during World War II. Afterwards, she became a simple doctor who treated people who were afflicted with epilepsy. As usual, there are always some small-minded superstitious people looking to make trouble for others. They accused her of being a witch because they considered epilepsy to be a disease caused by a demon's touch. I come here every day to put flowers on her grave. People have mistaken me for a ghost because I only come at night. I don't want people to know I'm related to someone they think to be a witch. I don't want to be shunned, scorned, or gossiped about." I tried to comfort her and calm her a little by saying, "Don't worry, Carmen. Your grandmother's spirit may be able to rest in peace if you tell people the truth now. We live in more modern times, and there's no need to worry. I won't tell anyone about you being the ghost. It'll be our little secret." Carmen laughed. She and I became good friends after that. Ever since that day, whenever I hear someone talking about ghosts, I just look at the photo I took of Carmen and I break out laughing.